In this presentation, we will generate a purchase order. Time to start figuring with Sage 50 Cloud Accounting. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars file. We're currently in the Customer and Sales section. We're going to be looking at a purchase order. When we consider a purchase order, you want to think about the flow chart or what's going to be happening within the flow of the activities. To do so, we're going to go on down to the Vendor and Purchases section. Now, the purchase order is going to be right here. It's going to be in our flow for the purchase of inventory. So first thing, you're not going to have a purchase order unless you're dealing with inventory, which means you're in like a merchandising type of company, typically, rather than a service industry. So you're going to be buying and selling inventory for the most part in order to be entering a purchase order. Also note that the purchase order is going to be a bit unusual in that the purchase order actually doesn't have a financial transaction related to it, which is a little bit different than the other type of forms. Most of these other types of forms are actually kind of a journal. You can think of them as a journal entry. You can think of them as having a financial transaction to them. The purchase order does not. So you kind of want to keep that in mind. It looks like it would, because when we create the purchase order, as you will see, we'll populate it, we'll put numbers in it, and you'd think that some of those numbers might be used in order to affect the financial statements. But it's a little bit different than a purchase that we might make if we were to request a purchase personally from something like an Amazon or some kind of online distributor. Because if we were to purchase something personally, we typically have to pay at the point of the request. Meaning, if I purchase something on Amazon and then I say, hey, you're going to ship it to me later, that's great. They want the money now. They want the credit card information now. They want to take our money at that point. So that means that we're going to have a financial transaction if that were the case, because we're going to be paying them at that point of time, and therefore, of course, the credit card or the cash account would then be affected at that point. However, with a purchase order, we are imagining, or we would be in a situation where we are requesting something without having paid for it and without having received it. Therefore, the request may be very detailed in terms of what we're requesting and how much it might cost, but we haven't actually paid for it and we haven't actually received it. Therefore, no effect on the financial statements. So you can imagine, like, we're ordering our guitars. Let's say we're imagining them ordering from China or something like that. Our purchase orders are going to be mainly U.S. companies, but just imagine we're purchasing something from China. The guitar's coming in from China, right? We're requesting that they give us these guitars then, and we haven't yet got them yet. We're not paying for them at that point of request. When we then receive the guitars, then we're going to use the purchase order and link it to an actual bill. And the bill is the point in time that we're going to actually have the guitars in our warehouse, we're imagining, with the bill attached to it. And we'll enter both the inventory as well as the payable, or the accounts payable at that point in time. So keep that in mind. So no effect on the financial statements. We're going to go into then the purchase order. We're going to be creating a new purchase order. So new purchase order. We'll make the purchase order large up here. We're going to be going to our major vendor because we purchase guitars, and we purchase most of our guitars from Epiphone. So you can select the drop down or the little microphone here, or the magnifying glass, which then has a drop down, or you could just type in Epiphone and it'll start to populate for you. Tabbing through this, we got the mailing address. We don't have one. We should have populated one, but we don't have one if it was a major vendor. We probably should within the vendor field, but we're not going to for the practice problem. Ship to, it's going to be our address, so obviously it's pulling over our address in Beverly Hills, which is misspelled 90210, and there we have that. And then we're going to say the date is going to be January 12th, so I'm going to say 011220. So, and then we're going to say purchase order number. I'll give it a number on the purchase order, and we'll keep it at that. So then discount amount, terms, I'm going to keep this default terms, and the account is going to be the AP. We will keep that there. So then we're going to say the quantity is going to be the quantity of 1, and we're going to be buying and ELP. So this is going to be our items that we set up. We set up our inventory items now. They're going to be used both in the purchasing documents, like the purchase order here, and in the sales documents, such as the invoice. So this is going to be the ELP. We'll type in the ELP. The description will then populate for us, which is great. The GL account is going to be the 1,200, the 1,200, which is going to be the inventory. So in other words, when we get this, when we receive it, and we have the bill for it, it's going to be increasing inventory. The other side is going to be going to the accounts payable. And then the units price is going to be 400. That gives us the account or amount of the 400. So there we have it. purchase order for the 400. Let's go ahead and save this. So I'm going to say, all right, let's save this information. You're about to save a transaction. That's okay. I'm going to say okay. And then I'm going to close this back out. Now, let's just take a look at the financial statements. So the financial statements, just to consider them. I'm going to go back up top, reports up top. We're going to go on down to the financial statements. And let's take a look at the old balance sheet. The old balance sheet. And we're going to make that for January. Make the range from January to January, January 1st to January 31st. And so inventory is the thing that will be affected. Again, if we double click on it, we're not going to see an item for the purchase order we just put in place, right? It's not affecting it yet. The other side we know was in, we put in like accounts payable. But if I go to the accounts payable here, we have no purchase order at this time. What's going to happen is we're going to use that purchase order to kind of link over to the bill. We're imagining that the guitar then shows up with a bill like attached to it when it comes in to our warehouse. And then we could go to the bill information and enter it there. So we won't do that now, but we'll just, for an example, we would say like new bill. We're imagining like the guitar's here now, and it's got the purchase order with it. And if I was to type in Epiphone, and then notice it jumped over to the purchase order side of things to link to the purchase order. And then we can select the drop down and pick the purchase order that would apply, and then it would help us to pick that up. So again, don't record this now because we're going to do this later. But I'm going to say close that out. That's what's going to happen soon, so you have that to look forward to. So then we can obviously view and edit the purchase orders here. So I can go into the view and edit the purchase orders. These would be the outstanding orders that we have not yet received. I'm going to change the period up top. So I'm going to go to the period up top, and let's just make it for the year, the whole year, so that we should then pull in our information. So there's our purchase order. And so we can see here that it says checked as open. So that means we haven't yet received the goods for the purchase order. And once we receive them, then it'll be unchecked, and so we can track our purchase order. This is going to be important, of course, because note, again, this information is not on the financial statements. It's not being tracked in something like an accounts payable account, such as the bills will be when we owe it. So we need to put it in our system so we can say, hey, did we get that purchase order? Even though it's not affecting anything on the financial statements. So that's going to be it for now. Let's get out of here.